Fishermen find a lion 300 kilometers off the coast. The truth behind it is chilling. The water was calm, almost eerily so, as a fishing boat cut through the open sea. It was an ordinary morning, the sun barely breaking through the clouds, casting a soft gray light over the horizon. But then, something strange caught the attention of the captain, a silhouette in the distance, half submerged in the water. It wasn't the shape of a fish or a shark. No, this was something far different, something far more unexpected. The men aboard the boat leaned forward, squinting against the quiet expanse of the sea. As they drew closer, their hearts sank. There, floating aimlessly in the vastness, was a lion. Her tawny fur was drenched, her powerful body limp, as though she had surrendered to the endless sea. "She's alive," one of the fishermen muttered, barely above a whisper. His voice was a mix of disbelief and concern, but there was no mistaking the truth. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, and her eyes were half open, unfocused but alive. A silent understanding passed between the men. They had no idea how a lion had ended up so far from land, drifting helplessly in the vast ocean. The waters around them were deep, unforgiving, and the lion's presence here seemed like a cruel twist of fate. They pulled the boat closer, trying to stay calm, knowing that time was precious. The lion's body was weak, her movement sluggish as she barely responded to their presence. With careful hands, they began the difficult task of lifting her onto the boat, each of them moving with quiet urgency. As they settled her onto the deck, they could see the toll the journey had taken on her. Her fur was matted and streaked with salt, her body bruised, but still, she did not protest. She lay there, her breathing shallow, her golden eyes dull and distant, as if she had been adrift for days, or perhaps even longer. The captain knelt beside her, his gaze softening. There was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet acceptance. But what had led her here? How had she ended up so far from home? These were questions they could not yet answer. The boat slowly turned back toward the shore, the men moving gently around the lion, offering soft, reassuring words. She didn't respond, but she didn't pull away either. She remained still, as if waiting for something, perhaps for the pain to end, perhaps for help. As the shore came into view, the men remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts. They could not understand how this had happened. The vastness of the sea seemed too large, too wild, to offer any answers. But one thing was clear. The lion, though far from home, was not alone now, and they would do everything they could to ensure she would not be left adrift in isolation. The lion lay on the shore, her body motionless but her breathing still faintly audible. The sun was low, casting long shadows over the small group of locals who had gathered around her. The fishermen, now joined by a few concerned villagers, watched quietly, uncertain of what to do next. The sight of a lion so far from land was unprecedented, and there were no easy answers to the questions running through their minds. How had she ended up here? What was the story behind her silent drift? Her once majestic body was battered, bruised in places, and covered in a heavy layer of salt. The ocean had left its mark. The men and women who stood around her whispered quietly, careful not to disturb the fragile creature. She lay on a bed of soft sand, her belly slightly swollen, her limbs splayed awkwardly as though her strength had been drained away in the open sea. The air was thick with the scent of salt water and the soft hum of the breeze. Quiet tension filled the space as everyone awaited the arrival of the veterinarian, who had been called in to examine the lion. Her condition, so far removed from the wild, felt like a delicate mystery, an unknown puzzle that no one could solve yet. When the vet finally arrived, she moved with practiced calm, though her eyes reflected the same curiosity and concern shared by the others. She knelt beside the lion, running her hands gently over the animal's body, feeling for any signs of injury or illness. The lion did not flinch, nor did she growl or move away. She simply lay there, the faint rise and fall of her chest the only sign of life. The veterinarian's brow furrowed as she ran her fingers over the lion's fur, gently pressing against her swollen belly. There was no immediate reaction from the lion, but the vet's expression grew somber. The rest of the group remained still, knowing that whatever the vet found would be crucial. This isn't just exhaustion from the sea, the veterinarian said softly, as though talking more to herself than anyone else. She's pregnant. A hushed silence fell over the group. The realization hit like a wave. The lion, battered and exhausted, was carrying new life, and yet she had been stranded here, so far from a natural home, struggling to survive in an environment that was not hazed to endure. Her swollen belly told its own story. The cubs inside her, fragile and vulnerable, had no place to grow safely in this world so far from the pride. The sea had taken everything from her strength, her ability to hunt, her bond with her pride. And now it seemed she was at the mercy of something far more fragile, more delicate than even she could manage alone. The villagers exchanged quiet glances, unsure of what to say. No one wanted to speak aloud of the tragedy unfolding, but it was there, heavy and undeniable. They could feel the weight of the situation. How had she ended up so far from the jungle? Was she abandoned? Had she wandered off, lost and alone, only to end up cast upon the mercy of the sea? But in that moment, another thought settled over them. How long could she survive in this state? Would she have the strength to carry on? Or was it already too late? The veterinarian stood up slowly, brushing sand from her hands. Her gaze lingered on the lion's form, a soft sigh escaping her lips. The lion's eyes remained closed, her chest rising and falling with slow, shallow breaths. She had suffered greatly, yet still she held on to life. But for how long? As the group quietly observed, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of the sea and the distant hum of waves crashing against the shore. Time seemed to stand still, and in that moment, the lion's struggle felt as much a part of the world as the very air they breathed. None of them could answer the questions, but they knew this much. The lion was not alone. There would be no more drifting in the vast, unforgiving sea. Whatever happened next, they would stand with her and with the fragile life she carried within. Days passed, and the lion remained weak, her belly swollen with new life. The group watched in quiet concern, unsure of what more they could do. Then, one morning, as the sun rose, the lion's body shifted. A low groan escaped her, and with a slow, quiet push, she began to give birth. The first cub emerged, small and fragile, letting out a soft cry. Despite her exhaustion, the lion nuzzled it gently, drawing it close. A second cub followed, stronger, its cries more insistent. The lion, weak but determined, licked them clean, protecting them with the quiet assurance of a mother. The veterinarian, watching this fragile miracle unfold, felt the weight of the moment. Despite everything, the lion had brought new life into the world. The villagers knew the time had come to return her to the wild. As the lion rose, her cubs at her side, they walked together toward the jungle. The humans stood at the shore, silently watching the family disappear into the green. The lion had been lost, but now she was whole again. The miracle of life had touched them all, and they would carry the memory with them always.